Good morning from the holy, beautiful city of Tzfat, considered the holiest city in the world. Right over there, I saw a rocket launch. The enemy has been attacking us. Many people have been fooled. You have, I remember this was by the Trump-Hillary runoff. A very wise woman. She's in fact also a psychiatrist and an internist. She was telling me about these different options. I said to her, everything you're saying is very beautiful, except for one thing. We are in the middle of a war. And in the middle of a war, the question is not, do you appoint a general that you like, that's nice, that speaks well, or do you appoint a general that can get the job done? We don't hate anybody. I'm a Jew. I certainly don't hate any Arabs. Literally, just over the mountain there are millions of people that want to kill me. They want to kill you. Islam has been historically, this is a fact. You can fact check it. There's no group that has killed more people in the world than Islam. On a conservative level, conservative estimate, they've killed over 700 million people. That's twice the amount of people in the United States as we speak. A person has to understand why Islam kills people. And once you understand that, you'll understand why Islam is ready to kill you. And the only thing that's stopping you is our armies. The first reason is that is what their leader Muhammad did. Muhammad effectively was delusional, and he decided that he was a prophet, and he came to the Jewish people. He wanted to be a continuation of the Jewish prophets, and they didn't accept him. And so he got upset with them. He came to the Arab people who he comes to, and they were pagans. They weren't interested in prophets and monotheism and one God. And to make a long story short, as I heard from an imam who personally told me that he was in the 30 years of his, I don't want to call it leadership, but warship. He was involved in 4 wars or skirmishes every single year. So that's 30 times 4, 120 battles. So effectively, he was a gang leader. And the style of his leadership, if you want to call it that, was completely what terrorism is today. They're just following what he does. In fact, no terrorist, as crazy as it seems, is actually as evil as their leader, Muhammad. Even ISIS, that took women and sold them as sex slaves, even they were not as bad as him. And you can read this historical accounts coming from Islam. There was Jewish people that he burnt down. I guess date trees were their source of income. He took the men, he killed them, he raped their wives as they were being murdered. This is a person whose sadism, to best of my knowledge, is unmatched. I don't know of any person in human history that had such a level of sadistic barbarism. As in fact a former Muslim who put out a $50,000 reward. And remember, there's 1.4 billion people that can claim this reward, to anybody that can prove that Muhammad was not a rapist, a child, a molester. His famous wife Aisha, who came to him when she was 6, consummated the marriage officially at 9. This is pedophile. This is the lowest of the low. And yet, he is considered the highest of the high to over 1.4 billion people. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that the way he taught his people, as everybody that knows anything about Islam knows, that there are 5 pillars. Many of them are nice, like giving 2.5% to charity, except when it goes to murdering people. But be that as it may, one of the 6 Islamic scholars discuss if this is another pillar or not. But everybody agrees that it's part of Islam. It's called jihad. And jihad, and this is what makes Islam a violent, vicious religion. Not to say that they're all violent and vicious, but many of them are, and the ones that we're dealing with are. And that is because they believe that the entire world has to be subjugated by force to Islam, and that's called jihad. And that's how Islam spread from a tiny little place in Arabia, conquering most of the world, And it effectively is the goal of Islam, which is to um, effectively cause a subjugation of the world to it by all means necessary. And this is against normative Islam as well, because they think that as long as anybody is not following their code of law, right? It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, if your country is not under Sharia law, it's not under the Islamic code of law, that country must be conquered, the people must be subjugated by force. And in terms of practice, we see that ISIS, these people will do anything. And in fact, they've gone to the point of just randomly murdering people, of horrifically raping women. This is the worst evil we've seen. Now, the problem is that Obama was part of this movement. It's called the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood, anybody that knows anything of history, was started in the 1920s. And this is very, very important to understand, because when the West came and conquered Islamic territories, for example, after World War I, the West effectively took over all the territories that formerly Turkey ruled the Middle East for 500 years, called the Ottoman Empire. And so when the West took over these lands, this was a very big blow to Islam, because according to Islam, Islam must rule the land, as we said. And so many Muslims saw this as a punishment from God because they were too lax in their religion, and they became more radical. And the Muslim Brotherhood, one of the largest terrorist organizations, which Hamas is part of, actually, in fact, the PA, quote unquote, the good Palestinians is part of, they actually have a philosophy not only of kind of direct murder, but taking over governments from within. And as reported by an Egyptian newspaper, Obama was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, he put the Muslim Brotherhood in office in Egypt. And even after the army deposed the Muslim Brotherhood, he had the Muslim Brotherhood come as guests to the State Department. We're talking about the President of the United States supporting terrorism. Furthermore, supporting Iran. Now, Iran is another radical terrorist organization. Obama was not trying to stop them from nuclear weapons. He was helping them get nuclear weapons. In fact, he sent a letter in the beginning, you could look this up, saying to them that we are not going to attack you. In other words, go ahead, make the nuclear weapons. I have to pretend to be against you, but really I am for you. He made what's called a Hunda, a 10-year peace deal. Now, why 10 years? Because according to Islam, once Muhammad made a peace deal for 10 years, and then he attacked the people he made a peace deal with, because this is the concept in Islam. You never, ever, ever have peace with anyone. You have to take over the country. The only thing that you can do is make a Hunda. You could have a false peace treaty in order to rearm yourself and attack again. And so here we have a president of the United States engaging in allowing an enemy. Now, Iran is different to other Muslims. Other Muslims are Sunnis, Iran is Shiites. And the Shiites believe that, this is direct quote, when the world will be filled up to a horse's knee with blood, the Messiah will come. So anybody that's supporting the Democratic Party, which has been influenced by Obama to be acquiescing to evil. And again, one other lie, and you can read this from Ian Pacipo. Ian Pacipo was a 2-star Soviet general, the literally most highest ranking Soviet officer that ever defected to the West. He wrote a book called Disinformation. And the entire concept that there's a Palestinian is a lie. Now, if you look at the history, the concept of Philistines, they disappeared from our world over 2,500 years ago. So how did there suddenly become a Palestinian nation out of nowhere? The answer is because if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes believed. And this is the lie. The lie is that there was an ancient people called Palestinians on this territory. Israel's been around for over 3,300 years. There were many ancient tribes here. All of them were gone 2,500 years ago. The only ancient tribe that is left is the Jewish people. The Arabs that came here mainly to get jobs from the Jewish people that came to Israel to resettle a swampland. It was an abandoned, basically, land. a couple of Jews, a couple of Arabs here, but that's it. It was not a land. It certainly was not owned by any indigenous people before Israel was the British from 1917. Again, fact check this. If this goes against the facts, it means that the facts that you have are lies. Before that, 500 years of the Ottoman Turks, which come from Turkey. So again, the whole concept that there was an indigenous people is a lie. The only indigenous people to Israel are the Jewish people. Just because we don't walk, and dress and have a backward society doesn't mean that we're not indigenous to this people, to this land. So again, a massive lie, completely supported by the Democratic Party. And the reason this matters is because ultimately the President of the United States is the general of the army. He is in charge of the army. And the question that you have to ask yourself is this: if you are under attack, do you want the Democratic Party to be the ones defending you? Or do you want the Republican Party to be the ones defending you? Truth be told, the Republican Party has shown, as Bibi Netanyahu, as everybody, a non-ability to attack Iran. Everybody gets afraid of Iran because they blackmail. So in the end of the equation, the only one you can rely on, God. It doesn't, I guess, in the end of the equation, doesn't even matter because nobody's actually doing what has to be done. But this is just some insights from the Holy Land of Tzfat. Have a wonderful day.